I have a confession to make.
Oh.
And I feel like this is a safe space, so I'm just gonna put it out there.
Okay, I'm listening.
I lost about 3 hours of my life last night.
3 hours. That's a solid chunk of time. What happened? Did you fall down a Wikipedia wormhole or something?
Worse. So much worse. It was this show. And I won't even name it. I don't want to give them the free advertising, but it wasn't even good.
Oh, no.
That's the thing. It was objectively mediocre television.
Yeah.
But I sat there, and the credits would roll, and that little countdown timer would start, you know, the one, next episode playing in 5, 4.
I know it all too well.
And I just couldn't physically make my hand pick up the remote to stop it. It was like I was possessed.
The just one more syndrome. It's a real phenomenon.
Exactly. And I woke up this morning feeling groggy, a little bit guilty, and I started thinking about the sheer volume of time we spend doing this. Not just TV. I mean, novels, video games, gossip with friends, just daydreaming in the shower. If you actually tallied up the hours the average human spends in a world that doesn't exist,
right,
it's staggering.
It has to be.
It's got to be our biggest energy expenditure after, I don't know, sleeping and working.
You could argue it is the defining characteristic of our species. We aren't the tool-using animal or the bipedal animal so much as we are the storytelling animal.
And usually we just file that away under entertainment.
Right, a hobby.
We think of it as a way to relax, or maybe a vice, a way to procrastinate. But we have a stack of research today that suggests we have got this completely wrong.
We really, really do. We're going to flip that idea on its head today.
We aren't looking at stories as art for this deep dive. We're not critiquing plot structures or character arcs.
No.
We are looking at the stack of papers. We're talking evolutionary psychology, neuroscience, biochemistry that suggests storytelling is, well, it's a biological engine.
That's a great way to put it.
It's a survival mechanism that evolution built into our brains just as deliberately as it gave us opposable thumbs.
We are going to look at the machinery under the hood. We're going to look at storytelling as neurochemistry, as a survival strategy, and as a neural architecture.
And here is the hook. Here's the promise. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to understand why you cry at movies, even though you know, logically.
You know it's fake.
The characters are just pixels on a screen. You're going to understand why you buy cars you don't need. And perhaps most disturbingly, and this is the part that really kept me up last night after my TV binge, you're going to learn why your most vivid, cherished memories, the ones you are absolutely sure of,
the bedrock of your identity,
might be total fiction.
It is a fascinating and honestly slightly unsettling journey we're about to go on. We have a really diverse stack of sources today to get through.
Okay, walk us through the pile. What are we working with?
So we're starting with the big picture. We're talking evolutionary psychology. We're looking at Brian Boyd's work on the origin of stories, which really challenges that idea that art is just a byproduct.
Okay.
Then we're moving into the psychological concepts, specifically something called narrative transportation.
And then we get into the wetware.
Yeah.
The actual brain stuff.
Right. Then we get into the neuroscience from Paul Hijacks, who did some pretty intense studies involving blood draws, actually, to see what stories do to our blood chemistry.
Whoa. Okay.
We have a brand new fMRI study from Konshihi and colleagues about how the hippocampus literally builds narratives. And then finally, we have some critical research on memory fallibility from Lacey and Stark that might, well, it might make you doubt everything you think you know about your own past.
So the mission today is to decode the machinery of narrative, how the brain builds it, why nature selected for it, and the dangerous glitches that happen when that storytelling mind overpowers reality.
Let's start the very beginning, or I guess the very, very beginning, evolution.
The Darwinian puzzle, because this is where I always get stuck. If you look at evolution, it's usually pretty ruthless. It cuts out the fat.
Right.
Efficiency is the name of the game. If something consumes a ton of energy and doesn't help you survive or reproduce, it usually gets weeded out over a few thousand generations.
Generally, yes. Energy is expensive. You don't waste it.
So fiction seems, well, it seems biologically expensive.
Yeah.
Why would early humans waste precious calories sitting around a fire telling made-up stories about spirits or heroes?
Right, when they could be hunting.
When they could be hunting or gathering or just sleeping. Every hour you spend telling a story is an hour you aren't looking for food. It seems like a total waste of time. Shouldn't natural selection have just killed off the storytellers and kept the people who only focused on nuts and berries?
That is the central question Brian Boyd tackles. And you're right, for a long time that was the prevailing view, that art was just Cheesecake for the mind.
Cheesecake for the mind. I like that.
It's a great phrase. A tasty byproduct of having a big brain, but not essential. Boyd argues that we have to stop looking at story as a byproduct and start looking at it as an adaptation.
An adaptation, like a thumb.
Just like a thumb.
Yeah.
He uses what he calls a biocultural approach, and he argues that art and storytelling are forms of cognitive play.
Cognitive play. Okay, I'm trying to get my head around that. I know what physical play is.
Yeah.
You know, you see kittens pouncing on each other or lion cubs wrestling in the savannah.
Right. And why do they do that? Why do they wrestle?
They're practicing for the real thing.
Exactly. They aren't actually fighting to the death. If they were, they'd get seriously hurt. They are simulating fighting. They're training their muscles, their reflexes, their coordination in a low-stakes environment.
So that when a real threat comes along...
A rival lion, a hyena, whatever.
Yeah.
They are ready. The neural pathways are paved. Boyd argues that storytelling does the exact same thing, but for the mind.
So instead of wrestling with our bodies, we're wrestling with ideas, with social situations.
Think of a story as a flight simulator for social life.
A flight simulator.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that analogy.
When a pilot gets into a simulator, they can crash the plane. They can lose an engine in a storm. They can make terrible decisions.
Right.
And when they step out, they are alive. But their brain has learned the lesson. Storytelling lets us simulate dangerous situations, complex social dynamics, emotional crises, all without any real-world risk.
So I don't need to actually be chased by a bear to know it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the story of the guy who got chased by the bear.
It goes deeper than just specific warnings, though. It's not just bear bad. It's about navigating the incredible complexity of human interaction. Think about a novel you read where a character makes a really bad choice. Maybe they cheat on their spouse, or they betray a friend. You, as the reader, experience the fallout. You feel the anxiety, the guilt, the social ostracization.
You feel him in your gut.
You are running a simulation of betrayal in your neural circuitry without actually blowing up your own life.
So my brain is getting the training data without the trauma.
Precisely. And Boyd argues this is crucial because humans are niche independent. We live everywhere. Deserts, Arctic, cities. We encounter new situations constantly. We need a flexible mind. And storytelling trains our pattern recognition.
Talk to me about patterns, because I usually think of patterns like, I don't know, math.
Yeah.
Or wallpaper.
The human brain is basically a pattern matching machine. We crave order. We are deep down terrified of chaos. And nature is random storms happen, predators appear, disease strikes, it's chaotic. But stories are structured. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They have cause and effect.
All right. A structure.
Boyd suggests that by engaging with these superstructured patterns in art and story, we are honing our brain's ability to spot patterns in the wild. We're training ourselves to find the signal in the noise.
So reading a mystery novel is basically lifting weights for my intuition.
That's a great way to put it. Boyd talks about this idea of a Darwin machine inside the brain.
No, hold on. A Darwin machine?
Yeah.
That sounds like something from a sci-fi movie. What does that even mean?
It's just a metaphor for how we think. Evolution works by random mutation and selection, right? Nature tries a billion variations, and the ones that work survive.
Okay.
Boyd suggests our brains do something similar on a microscale. Our brains are constantly generating random ideas, random connections, most of them are. Well, they're garbage. Useless noise.
I can confirm that. My brain is mostly noise.
We all are. But art and story provide a template, a pattern that helps us select and retain the good ideas. If a story grabs our attention, if it resonates, it survives in our neural network. It helps us organize the chaos of our own thought.
Okay, so that covers the individual. It trains my brain.
Yeah.
But we aren't solitary animals. We're tribal.
That's a huge component. You absolutely cannot talk about human evolution without talking about cooperation. We are physically weak. We don't have claws. We don't have fur. We can't run very fast. A lone human is a dead human.
Right.
We survive by cooperating in groups. But cooperation is really, really hard.
Because everyone wants to be the boss or do their own thing.
Or everyone just has different goals. You need to get everyone on the same page. Stories act as strategic information. Gossip, legends, myths, these aren't just entertainment. They are the user manual for the tribe. They teach us the norms.
Don't be the guy who hoards all the meat.
Right. And if there's a story about a guy who hoarded all the meat and then, I don't know, got eaten by a vengeful spirit, that story does a lot of heavy lifting. It enforces the rule without you having to physically police everyone.
It's a social control mechanism.
It is, but it's also about synchronization.
Synchronization? What do you mean?
If I tell you a story and you laugh at the funny part and I laugh at the funny part, or we both get shaked up at the sad part, What has just happened between us?
We've connected. We've shared something.
Biologically, we have shared a mind space. Our neural states are aligned. Our brains are literally firing in similar patterns. If we all believe the same origin myth, or we all hate the same villain in a story, we are reinforcing our bond. We are signaling that we play by the same rules. It facilitates cooperation.
So, when I'm binging that Netflix series, when I watched last night, and I'm texting my group chat about it, and we're all freaking out about the cliffhanger,
Yeah.
I'm not just procrastinating.
No, not at all.
My brain is practicing for the apocalypse and trying to bond with my tribe so they don't kick me out into the cold to die.
In a very literal evolutionary sense, yes. That is exactly what is happening. You are servicing the social machinery that keeps you alive.
Okay, so that's the why. That's the evolutionary pressure. That makes total sense why we would keep this trait around. Now I want to look at the how. What is actually happening in my brain when I get sucked into a story?
Right.
Because we've all had that feeling where the world around us just disappears. You look up from a book and realize it's dark outside and you haven't moved in 4 hours.
Psychologists have a specific term for that. They call it narrative transportation.
Narrative transportation. I like that. It sounds like a travel agency for the mind.
And they choose that word very carefully. It is the sensation of physically and mentally traveling away from your immediate reality and into the world of the narrative. It's not just a metaphor. To the brain, you have left the building.
Is it like a hypnotic trance or something?
It shares some similarities, but it's considered a distinct psychological state. It's different from flow, that feeling you get when you're deep in work or just thinking hard about a math problem.
Okay.
The research from study.com and others outlines 4 key elements that have to happen for true transportation to occur.
What are they?
First, there is empathy. You have to adopt the feelings of the characters. You have to care.
Right. You have to care if they live or die or if they get the girl.
Exactly. If you don't care, you aren't transported. Second is mental imagery. You are vividly hallucinating the scene in your mind's eye. You stop seeing the words on the page or the pixels on the screen, and you start seeing the world.
I do that. When I'm reading, I visualize where the furniture is in the room. I have a whole map.
And third is a loss of self-awareness. This is the big one. You forget the room you are sitting in. You stop noticing that your leg is asleep or that the clock is ticking or that you're hungry. Yourself kind of dissolves.
The world melts away. And a fourth.
Emotional reaction. You feel real emotions for fake events. You get angry, you feel joy, you feel fear. And this is where it gets really interesting and potentially dangerous for things like marketing and persuasion.
How so?
Because when you are in the state of transportation, your defenses are down.
What do you mean defenses? I don't feel like I have defenses up when I'm watching a movie.
Oh, you usually do, you just don't notice them. Think about a debate. If I try to convince you of something using facts and logic, say, you should buy this electric car because it has a 300-mile range and saves you $2,000 a year on gas, what does your brain immediately do?
I start checking the math. I think, well, electricity costs money too, and what about the battery life? And what about range anxiety? I start poking holes in it.
Exactly. You go into counter-argument mode. You are skeptical. You critique the argument. That is your defense mechanism against being manipulated or making a bad decision.
Right. I don't want to get scammed.
But in a story, that skepticism is suspended. This is what's called narrative persuasion. It's a one-way communication hack. When you are busy visualizing the narrative and empathizing with the hero, you don't have the cognitive bandwidth to fact-check. You're just immersed.
So if the car commercial isn't about gas mileage.
Right. If the commercial is a story, it's about a dad driving his daughter to her first day of college. It's raining, the road is slick, but the car handles it perfectly. They have a tender moment in the driveway. He drives away, holding back tears.
Okay, I'm tearing up just imagining the commercial. I can see it perfectly.
And you aren't critiquing the battery range, are you?
No.
You aren't doing the math on the electricity costs. You are buying the feeling of safety and paternal love. You have been transported. Advertisers know this. You don't buy the specs, you buy the story.
That is actually kind of scary. It's like a backdoor into the brain that bypasses the logic circuits.
It is. And it's used in healthcare, too. There is research showing that showing people a chart about the dangers of alcohol, liver cirrhosis statistics, death rates, is far less effective.
Then what?
Than telling a transporting story about one specific person whose life was ruined by it.
Because the chart triggers the critique brain, the counter-argument brain.
And the story triggers the empathy brain. It bypasses the logic gate and goes straight to the operating system. We learn from experience much better than we learn from data. And a transported story is an experience, as far as your brain is concerned.
This brings us to the chemistry. Because we can talk about transportation as a psychological concept, a feeling. But Paul J. Zak actually went into the lab to see what the hardware was doing.
He
And
did.
he didn't just put people on a scanner. He went old school.
He did. He wanted to measure the buzz of a story in the blood. So he designed an experiment where participants would watch emotive stories, and he would draw their blood before and after to measure the changes in neurochemistry.
Can we just pause on the methodology for a second? Because that seems incredibly difficult. I mean, if I'm watching a really sad movie and someone sticks a needle in my arm, well, I'm not thinking about the movie anymore. I'm thinking, ouch, needle.
It's a huge hurdle in the research, a massive confounding variable. They had to use IV lines that were established before the story started so they could draw samples without disrupting the experience too much. But even so, it shows how committed Zak was to finding the biological signature. He studied over 50,000 brains this way.
50,000. That is a lot of needles.
Yeah.
So what did he find? Is there a story molecule or something?
He found that it really comes down to a specific neurochemical cocktail, 2 main ingredients. And if you don't have both, you don't get the effect.
Okay, what's in the mix?
First, you have dopamine. We talk about dopamine a lot, usually as the reward chemical, the hit you get when you get a like on Instagram.
Right.
But in this context, it's the attention chemical. It binds to the prefrontal cortex and basically screams, focus. This is important. Something is about to happen.
So that's the hook. That's the explosion at the beginning of the movie, or the mystery box that gets opened.
Exactly. It creates arousal. But attention isn't enough. You can stare at a car crash or a math problem with high attention, but that doesn't mean you are immersed in a narrative. The second ingredient is oxytocin.
The love hormone. The cuddle chemical.
It's often called that, but it's really the connection chemical. It signifies emotional resonance and empathy. It makes us care. It signals that the person you are watching is part of your in-group. You're connected to them.
So dopamine makes you look, and oxytocin makes you feel.
Precisely. And when those two happen together, attention plus resonance, Zak calls that the immersion state. And his research shows that this state predicts behavior with incredibly high accuracy.
How accurate are we talking? Like 50-50?
Much higher. If he measures high immersion in your blood while you're watching a charity video, he can predict with 80% accuracy whether you will donate money afterwards. And not just that, he can even predict how much you will give.
That is mind-blowing. So my blood knows I'm going to donate before I do.
Your blood knows because the story has already changed your brain state. Your brain releases reward chemicals. We literally crave the next plot point like a drug, and it changes how we act in the real world long after the story is over.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Zak brings up this vivid example of watching a show about a serial killer.
Oh, right. I think I know the one. Is it the one where the guy looks through the windows?
That's the one. The narrative describes a killer who stalks victims by peering into their windows at night to learn their routine. Now, watching that, you get the dopamine spike from the fear and suspense. That's the attention.
My heart's already racing just thinking about it.
Then you get the oxytocin because you empathize with the victim inside the house. You are transported, you're immersed.
I have to admit, I watched something similar a few months ago. And I literally checked my front door lock 3 times that night. I felt ridiculous. I knew it was fiction, but I could not stop myself.
That is exactly what Zak is talking about. The result isn't just, that was a scary 60 minutes. The result is a behavioral change. You physically altered your future behavior checking the lock based on a story that you know is fiction. The story literally rewired your risk assessment. Disbelief wasn't just suspended, it was obliterated.
And he could measure this physically, not just in the blood.
Not just in the brain. Zak's team measures this via the cranial nerves, specifically the vagus nerve, which influences heart rate. Your heart rhythm literally changes when you are immersed. Your body does not know the difference between the story and reality. To your heart, the killer is outside your window.
That is wild. So we have the evolutionary reason survival, we have the psychological state transportation, and we have the chemical trigger dopamine and oxytocin. But I want to zoom in on the anatomy for a second, because real life is messy. It's chaotic. Stories are neat. How does our brain take the mess of life and turn it into a neat story?
This is where we have to talk about the hippocampus.
The memory center.
Right. And we have this fascinating study from Conshihi and colleagues that sheds light on exactly how the hippocampus builds narratives across time. Because think about it. Real life doesn't happen in a neat 2-hour block like a movie.
Right. Events in my life happen days, months, or years apart. I meet someone today, and I might not see them again for 3 weeks.
The question is, how do we link them? How do I know that the person I see today is part of the same story as the person I saw 3 weeks ago? How does the brain stitch that together into a single narrative thread?
So break down the experiment for us. How do they test this?
They put people in an fMRI machine, which scans blood flow in the brain to see which parts are active, and they had them listen to stories about specific characters. Let's use their examples. A side characters named Melvin or Sandra.
Poor Melvin. What happens to him?
Well, they split the participants into 2 groups. In the first group, the coherent narrative group, the events were linked. So, event 1, Melvin is in his kitchen cooking a pizza and he accidentally locks himself out of the house.
Okay. A relatable tragedy. I've been there.
Then there's a gap. Other things happen in the story. Then comes event 2. Melvin calls his friend later to say his kitchen is full of ash and smoke.
Okay, so those are 2 separate events, separated by time, but they clearly form a single narrative arc, cause and effect, the pizza fire narrative.
Right. And then they had the second group, the unrelated narrative group. They get the same character, Melvin. Event 1, Melvin loses a favorite recipe.
Okay. Bummer for Melvin.
Event 2, Melvin evades some financial trouble.
Okay, so same character, but the stories don't link up at all. Losing a recipe doesn't cause tax fraud.
Exactly. Unrelated. Now here's the magic. When they looked at the fMRI scans of the hippocampus, they found something incredible.
How's that?
In the coherent narrative group, the pizza fire group, the brain activity patterns for event 1 and event 2 looked almost identical.
Wait, explain that. The events were completely different. One was locking a door, the other was a phone call about ash. Why would the brain activity look the same?
That is the big discovery. The pattern similarity in the right hippocampus was striking. It means the brain was physically bridging the gap between those distant events. It was treating them as part of the same neural object. It was filing them in the same folder, so to speak.
And in the unrelated group, the recipe and the taxes.
No pattern similarity whatsoever. The brain filed them as completely separate files. Melvin recipe and Melvin taxes were strangers to each other in the brain.
So a story is like a piece of glue that binds separate memories together in the brain.
It's more like a zipper. The study found that when people tried to recall these events later, the brain reinstated or replayed that neural pattern. And the stronger that reinstatement was, the more details they remembered. A coherent story allows you to pull the whole zipper.
So you grab one memory.
You grab one memory, the pizza, and because it's narratively linked, you get the whole chain, the ash, the phone call, the feeling of panic. It all comes back as one unit.
And if there is no narrative, if the zipper's broken,
the memories remain isolated. They're much harder to retrieve. You might remember the recipe but lose the financial trouble. Narrative coherence is the architecture of memory retrieval.
that sounds great for learning. If I want to remember facts, I should weave them into a story.
Absolutely. It is the most effective mnemonic device we have.
And here is where it gets really interesting to me. If our brains are so good at this, if they're designed to prioritize coherence, making sure the story makes sense over everything else, doesn't that create a problem?
It creates a massive problem.
Because reality isn't always coherent. Reality is messy and random.
And our brains hate that mess. This brings us to the glitch, the dark side of this incredible storytelling engine.
We're talking about false memories.
We are. We have this research from Lacey and Stark regarding memory fallibility, particularly in the courtroom. And it effectively shatters what they call the video recorder myth of memory.
The video recorder myth being the idea that my memory is a hard drive, right? I have a file labeled my 10th birthday, and when I remember it, I just hit play and watch the footage.
Right. That is how most people think it works. I saw it with my own eyes. But scientifically, that is dead wrong. Memory is not a playback. It is a reconstruction. The psychologist Ulrich Neisser used a great analogy. Out of a few stored bone chips, we remember a dinosaur.
That is poetic, but also deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
We build the dinosaur from scratch every time.
Every single time. You have a few fragments of data stored, maybe the smell of the cake, a visual flash of a red balloon, a feeling of excitement. Those are the bone chips. And every time you access that memory, your brain acts like a screenwriter and fills in the gaps to make a coherent scene. It builds the rest of the dinosaur.
And where does it get the rest of the dinosaur parts from? Where does it get the filler?
From schemas, stereotypes, expectations, logic. If you remember a birthday party, your brain thinks, well, birthday parties usually have candles, so it inserts candles into the memory, even if there weren't any. It putties over the holes to make the story smooth and logical.
So we are rewriting our own hard drive constantly.
Constantly, and we can overwrite it. This is called the misinformation effect. There's a classic study by Elizabeth Loftus that Lacey and Stark discuss. They showed people a video of a car accident.
Okay, pretty straightforward.
Then they asked questions, but they tweaked the language. For one group, they asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? And people gave reasonable estimates.
Hit is a neutral word.
But for the other group, they changed just one word. How fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other?
Ooh, smashed is a much more violent word.
And everything changed. Not only did people estimate significantly higher speeds, but when asked a week later if they'd seen any broken glass at the scene.
Let me guess. They said yes.
A large percentage of them remembered seeing broken glass. But there wasn't any broken glass in the original video.
None at all.
No. But the word smashed implies a narrative of violence and destruction. So the brain, striving for narrative coherence, inserted the broken glass. It edited the memory to fit the story. If they smashed, there must be glass. The logic overwrote the reality.
That is terrifying. Because if I'm on a jury and a witness says, I saw broken glass, I believe them. I assume they're telling the truth as they saw it.
And they think they're telling the truth. They aren't lying. Their brain has lied to them. And this leads to the most dangerous myth of all in the legal system. He seems so sure he must be right.
Confidence equals accuracy.
The research shows a very weak and sometimes even negative correlation between confidence and accuracy in eyewitness testimony.
I think negative. How could it be negative? You're telling me the more confident someone is, the more likely they are to be wrong.
It can happen. It's because of feedback loops. Let's say a witness looks at a lineup. They are unsure. They pick someone tentatively. They say, I think it might be number 3.
Okay. So they're expressing uncertainty.
Then the police officer says, good job, you picked the suspect.
Boom. Dopamine spike, validation, I was right.
Immediately, their confidence skyrockets. But more importantly, they rewrite the memory of the event to justify that confidence. They start thinking, actually, you know what? I did get a really good look at him. The lighting was actually pretty good. I remember his eyes distinctly.
So they're building a more coherent story.
Their confidence goes up to 100%, but their accuracy hasn't changed at all. They are just as wrong as they were before, but now they are loud about it.
And I assume stress makes this all much, much worse, right? Because I always hear people say, I'll never forget the face of the man who attacked me. I always assumed a traumatic event would be burned into my brain forever.
That's another one of those powerful but incorrect myths. High stress releases cortisol. And while cortisol can strengthen the gist of a memory, the feeling of absolute terror, it actually scrambles the specific details. It messes with the hippocampus's ability to encode the what, where, and when.
Is there data on this? Because that feels so counterintuitive.
There is a terrifying study involving military personnel at a survival school.
Okay, so these are pros. These aren't random people off the street. These are trained observers.
These are elite, highly trained soldiers. They were placed in a mock prisoner of war camp. We are talking high stress, physical interrogation, hoods, screaming, physical confrontation. It was designed to simulate the worst possible day of their lives.
A nightmare scenario.
Truly traumatic.
Afterward, they were asked to identify their interrogator, the person who had been physically aggressive with them just 24 hours earlier.
What are the results? Many of them could not identify the person. They picked the wrong person from a lineup. Even worse, if the researchers gave them misleading info like, did the interrogator have glasses? Many of them incorporated that false info and identified a person with glasses who wasn't even there.
These are soldiers trained to observe, and they couldn't remember the face of the guy screaming at them.
It's a phenomenon called weapon focus. If someone is threatening you, your brain screams, survive. It focuses all of its attention on the threat, the fist, the knife, the gun.
Right. The dangerous thing.
It does not focus on the facial structure or the color of the shirt. Your brain is telling a survival story. Avoid the sharp thing. It isn't telling the story. Memorize the face for the court sketch.
So if we pull all this together, we have this incredible storytelling engine. It helps us evolve, it helps us bond, it creates our culture, and it gives us pleasure.
Yeah.
But it has a fatal flaw. It prioritizes making sense over being true.
That is the double-edged sword. The same mechanism that allows us to cooperate and learn, that hippocampus integration we talked about, is the same mechanism that makes us so susceptible to false memories and manipulation. We are biological story machines. We can't turn it off.
It really makes you question your own biography.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking about my own childhood memories, the ones I tell at dinner parties. How much of that is real and how much is just, I don't know, the director's cut?
It's a question we should all ask ourselves.
So what does this all mean for us? beyond just having an existential crisis on a Tuesday afternoon?
I think the synthesis here is about awareness. We can't turn off the storytelling engine. It's who we are, it's how we think, but we can be aware of the edit.
Be the editor, not just the audience.
Exactly. When you are swept away by a commercial, recognize the chemical wash. Feel the oxytocin and the dopamine and ask, wait, am I crying because this insurance company has a really great policy or because the music is in a minor key?
Check the facts before you buy the car based on the feeling.
And regarding memory, be humble. When you are absolutely certain about a memory from 5 years ago, ask yourself, is this the raw footage? Or is this a story I've told myself so many times that I've polished off all the rough, contradictory edges?
Because we are constantly rewriting the past to make sense of the present.
We are. We are the unreliable narrators of our own lives.
That is a provocative thought to leave you with. Next time you tell a story at a dinner party, one of your greatest hits, just remember, you might be entertaining your friends, but you might also be writing fiction.
And that's okay. Just don't testify to it in court.
Fair enough. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
My pleasure. See you next time.